Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because, folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back, friends. Oh my goodness. We are creeping along in this year. Man, how has your 2025 been? Has it been a whirlwind? Has it just already flown by? I can't believe we're almost entering whatever that word is. Entering, that's what I'm trying to find. The end of the month of the first month of a year. And it's funny, there's sometimes what I love about a new year is that it's totally unpredictable and you never know in a good way and then sometimes in a not so good way what changes are going to hit you. And part of it is just being prepared for the ride, to just be prepared to hang on, be prepared that things are not going to go as planned, and be prepared to realize that there are external circumstances that are outside of your control. And the truth is, as prepared as you can be, you may not still be prepared, and that's okay. And today we're going to talk a little bit about something that I've just noticed more recently, and it's really come to the forefront of my mind, whether it be through other things that I'm reading or just some internal reflections that I've been doing that I really think is gonna help you shape the rest of this year. So this is a really important episode, and I really think it's kind of a, I don't know if secret, so to speak, because it's not really a secret, but it's kind of a secret to say, how do certain people seem to just move through anything? Why is it that maybe I get stuck when I feel like the world around me is not stuck? And I want to remind you that what you see on the outside that people project or portray is not always what's going on in the inside. But actually the inside is what we're going to talk about today because that is a little bit of a secret. Hint hint. I know I'm you know, ruin it a little bit, but this is what we're going to talk about because I did get an email this morning and it reminded me why this conversation is so important. And it was from Tony Robbins. So I get some of his emails sometimes. And the main quote that was at the beginning of the email that said, "You can't control the external world, but you can influence it. Start by taking charge of your internal world." And in a world where things can happen, we're in a lot of change. In fact, even in my little corner of the world in Louisiana, we are currently waiting for some snow to hit, which is never happens here. It's like once in a million years. Okay. And so if snow is going to happen, we are going to be in a different situation because down here in the South, we're not prepared for things like snow or ice. And it's really exciting, but it's also really it'll shut down our entire community, really, is what happens. And so those are external forces. Weather is external forces that we cannot predict, plan for, and sometimes we just have to move through it. And in life, when you're trying to create things or you have a dream that you've set out on, it is very tempting to focus on external factors and waiting for circumstances to be just right before taking action or not doing anything or I say not doing anything, but not taking a step because that thing that we want to do just seems impossible. And today we're going to talk about how the internal work we do really shapes the changes we see in our lives. And as a therapist who has been providing therapy for at least over a decade at this point, and observing and listening and hearing stories and then having my own lived experience, I have really come to realize that this internal business is no joke. And if you really want to be able to create these things in your life, you have to be able to start the change within. Because the change within, if you don't do it, you may actually achieve the things you want to achieve, but it's harder to sustain through challenges and through adversity when you don't have the internal tools, resources, and peace, quite frankly, within to move through those hard external forces that you could have never predicted would have came. So I'm really excited for you to join me today because we're going to dive into this a little bit. In these first few episodes of the year, I try to take some solo opportunities before we have guests because I really want you to set you up with some thoughts or some things that can hopefully propel you forward. So let's start off. Why does change feel so hard? Why? And even myself, it's crazy. We want to change. Most of us have the knowledge of what we need to do to change. There is some gaps, like if you're wanting to create a possibility or go somewhere you've never been before, you may not know all the steps that's needed to change. But change, I don't care who you are. As somebody who's sat on the opposite couch helping people change, trying to do hard things myself, I realize that change isn't automatic or easy, and it takes a lot of intentional effort. And there's a lot of fear associated with change. I mean, I honestly have had the privilege and honor of listening to people's stories of, they want to change. They know that the situation they're in is not helpful or it's not where they want to be or it's toxic for their life. It's actually hurting them, this situation. Maybe they're mental, maybe not hurting physically, but hurting maybe mentally and just putting a strain on everything in their life. And there is a fear of stepping into the unknown and changing because the lack of guarantees. And so sometimes we will cling, I'm talking about clinging on for dear life, like you're hanging on a cliff to the familiar because it's comfortable and it prevents us from stepping out into the unknown because of that lack of familiarity. We don't know what it's going to be like. We don't know what's going to happen. What if I step out? Well, I'll lose this, or how will life be different? Now, and I'm telling you that like life is going to change no matter what. So let's go ahead and put that disclaimer out there. Life is going to change. In fact, the one thing that you can put your money on if you want to go gamble is that something's going to change in your life, and something's going to change in your life this year. 100%, 1,000%. I hope it's a good change, but something is going to change. And knowing that change is going to happen already can sometimes help us realize that I can either be the one that is trying to influence this change, or there's going to be external circumstances that is going to influence this change already. And there's a lot of external distractions a lot of times when we are trying to step out to make this change. Sometimes it's blaming circumstances. I'll be honest with you, if you want to be held captive in a place where you cannot move from, then it is being in a cycle of blame. And this is one of the things that breaks my heart the most, I'll be honest with you, is when I see people, and I do it myself. So anything that I'm talking about here, please know there's no judgment, there's no shame. Like this is just the reality of how we operate sometimes as humans. But when you are blaming everyone around you or everything around you for your circumstances, then you are disempowered. And so what I mean is that you are not empowered to be able to make change. In fact, you're held captive by those circumstances because it's hard for you to let go, or it's hard for you to accept that yes, there are things in my life that I did not have control over. Yes, those people hurt me or they influenced me negatively, or this workplace is draining the life out of me. But you have the power of choice, and you can rise above whatever circumstance you are in. I know that there are people out there that, like, you might say, well, Christy, I'm struggling with this chronic illness. I just can't escape it. And listen, I'm not saying that there's not hard things in life that we have to go through that are just too terrible, honestly. But we can say, am I going to be stuck in this thing that I can't control, or am I going to start focusing instead? And it could be like an illness, and that you're really struggling with, but you can focus on what you can control. And even in terrible external circumstances or things that are influencing our bodies, our mind, we can work on that internal compass, is what we're going to talk about today. Another common external thing that can keep us held, I guess, captive or not able to move forward is waiting for permission. I remember when my early days of really starting to reflect on how much goal setting has changed my life. and wanting to encourage others, I had a blog, okay? And I would blog. So before this was a podcast, this was a blog, okay? And it was actually a blog that helped me through my burnout and my stuck place. It's amazing to think how writing can really help you move forward. And I wrote a blog that said, stop waiting for permission. And in fact, you can actually go over to inspiringpossible.com and you can go in the blog and resources and you search, you will find this blog. Stop waiting for permission. And so many times, I think in life, we are waiting for people to say, that's a good idea. You should do that. I just had a conversation the other day with somebody and they said, I'm just so frustrated because other people are telling me these things that they think it's not possible. And I told them, I said, listen, people honestly, when they come to you with anything that's kind of maybe negative, most of the time, if they love and care about you, it's because they either can't see the vision, number one, or number two, they are just wanting to make sure you're okay. And sometimes when we step out into that unknown, there can be that can be scary for other people watching us do that. Okay. But this is where you need to know that internal compass of why is it that I set out to do this? Why is it important for me? And making sure that you are giving yourself permission to make that change, that you are giving yourself permission to let that thing go that is no longer serving you, that you're giving yourself that permission. When we're growing up, we have to ask permission, at least, especially in the culture I was raised. Like, you have to ask permission to do a lot of things. Okay. And it's normally, ask before you do. And sometimes we can wait for other people to give us permission. But when you become an adult, folks, I have to tell you, I'm not saying that you don't need to make sure that if you have a partner in your life, that they're aligned with the choices you're making. That's why it's important, folks, to choose a partner that is aligned with y'all. Y'all have aligned vision and mission and values for your life. But, sometimes we can give ourselves that permission. I just want to remind you that today. Give yourself permission to change. And one other common external distractions, we've talked about blaming your circumstances or others, waiting for permission. Another thing that can hold us back is that seeking external validation. So often we want people to say, "Yes, you should do that." I'll be honest, I'm the queen of this. Believe it or not, I want people to approve of what it is that I am doing, and I want them to see the vision too. But one of the hard things that I've had to learn along this journey is that I might not get external validation from nobody. Okay. And sometimes, even as I'm starting to go towards a goal and make that change, I may not always get that external validation of progress. Sometimes progress takes a long time. And I want to dispel any myths today because y'all know I come at y'all. I try to be 100% honest. Okay. Change feels hard because it is hard. You will never see somebody who has maybe created something that you thought was impossible and know that they got there easy. It wasn't easy. They may have made it look easy. They may have not, told the truth. Okay. But it's not easy. There is sacrifice that will be required. There will be change that feels hard, but you have more power than you think. And starting within can shift everything, and there is possibilities for you. So I want you to think, how often do you think, if only this changed, then I can do this? Or if only this person gave me approval, then maybe I could go and do that. I want you to reflect on that. How often do you think, if this factor changed, then I could do this other thing? And remind yourself, you have the power to begin changing, and it changes from within. So something popped up on my Facebook social media because, guys, I'm on the Facebook generation. I can remember when Facebook first came out, I was in college. It was just for the people on my very small college campus. I can remember setting it up. I think this was about 20 years ago, actually, believe it or not, that I joined Facebook. But also 20 years ago, something that happened was that my younger self decided to move to England, okay, with no roadmaps, no guarantees, just a willingness and desire to step into this unknown thing, okay? I wanted to step into this unknown thing. So I jumped out and said, "Look, I really feel like I'm supposed to go to England." And it wasn't just like I was going to England by myself, guys. So let me preface this. I had an opportunity to do this school called a discipleship training school. And this is where I really think you have to, in my experience, stay aware of what the internal is telling you. Because I have a belief system that's really driven a lot of decisions that I've made in my life. And I remember in this particular instance, for a while, I had been dreaming about this house. Seriously, a house I've never seen. It was this beautiful older home. And I remember I just felt like I was supposed to go to this house. This gives me a little bit of goosebumps just saying this and reflecting on this. And I had this dream of this house for a minute. Maybe I don't know if it was weeks or months. I really can't remember, but I remember vividly dreaming of this house. And I'd had a past experience where I had went to a, I guess, what they call a short-term mission trip with this same organization, and they had given me this book about these to give like different things that they actually do, and they have these bases all throughout the United States. Called It's called YWAM, Youth with a Mission, and they gave me this book of all of these places you could possibly go for this discipleship training school. And I put it on the back burner. I didn't think much of it, but as I was getting closer to graduating, I really felt again called that there was this opportunity that I really felt like I should step into. And so I remember I was looking through the book, and then there was the picture of the house. And they were going to have a new school starting in January 2005. So we're now in January 2025. This is January 2005 that was supposed to start. And I remember, I don't know how I'm gonna get to England. Like, it's not like I had much money. My family wasn't really able to give me any support in that way. I mean, they might have given a little bit, but it was kinda costly to go live in England. And, it was for a purpose that was, more my internal, and my internal was more of how can I grow deeper to, God and understand my purpose in life. And so there was not actually internal motivation to go to this school, but the internal part of it was too, is that there was this vision that I had that I just felt I had to go. And I didn't realize this then, but I realize it now, is that I had been unknowingly preparing for that moment for years. Even as a teenager, I remember there were things that internally helped me shape my mindset. I used to journal as a teenager, maybe not all the time, but I have journals of me expressing my thoughts and feelings and really seeking that higher power's guidance in my life. And I also had experiences where I would read a lot of just different thought processes that would help me shift my mindset. And there had been little things that I'd been stepping out in and realizing that the experience could actually be quite amazing. If you just, and in fact, I'll be honest with you guys, the scariest things I have did in my life, and especially when I think about moving and going on to trips, have been the most incredible experiences of my life. And if fear or people's approval, because I can remember that trip, everybody thought I was a little nuts about going over across the pond, I ain't gonna lie. And those were the days where you didn't have, we had dial-up internet, folks. Let me cast a vision for you here. You could not have a cell phone that could get an international plan. You had to have an international calling card. I still think about my poor mother of how she must have just stressed, because part of this DTS was that you were also going to Africa and living in Africa for 3 months, which is a big, which is a big jump, from small town USA, Louisiana. Okay. And so that was really scary. But at the same time, there were moments that I was paying attention to that did give me validation that I was on the right path. Like, one example was I was in a busy shopping mall. I remember I'd just taken off work because I was waiting tables. I'd been, I really started working probably the time I was 17, 16, and until. And so I was waiting tables trying to save up some money for this trip because there was still part of my balance to go to this thing that was not paid. So there was a lot of faith in stepping out in this faith. But the internal stuff that I had been kind of preparing for years helped me take this act of courage. And I remember I was in the mall. It was a busy time. I just randomly got off early, which never happens. And I was questioning, I remember. So there is fear, guys. I was questioning, should I do this? I mean, I'm supposed to leave in like 2 weeks. I don't know if this is really the smartest thing for me to do. I don't have all my money. So all of that fear that creeps in, we all have it. We all have this list of things that will hold us back in a heartbeat, started to creep in. And I remember all of a sudden, I was in our mall, okay? And there was a guy that walked up to me. Never met the guy in my life, never seen him in my life, didn't even know who he was. And he asked me, he said, "Are you Christy Pennison?" And I said, should I be scared? Should I run? I don't know. And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "This is so awesome that I'm meeting you here." He said, "Because I am going to the school that you're going to in January in England." And again, I'm getting like emotional thinking about that, but it was so crazy because it was like a validation of the journey that I was on. And so I'm saying all this to say that you will be placed on journeys. But if you have a strong internal pulling and an internal knowing that you should go in that direction, there will be moments in time where you will get those little gifts of validation that you're in the right direction. It doesn't mean they're going to come for certain, but I really do think that there are clues that are left along the pathway. And part of the reason why we want to take charge of that internal world and how to change that internal world is because when you are able to lean into those things, when you're able to reframe your challenges into opportunities, when you're able to look at something and say, I don't know why this is happening, but it must be happening for the greater good. And I didn't expect this to turn into a sermon, but like you have to know that this is where you're supposed to be headed. And it allows you to keep going even in the face of like adversity and things not working out. And so the lessons from that journey of me going and it ended up being a 6-month experience that was incredible. I really got to experience living in kind of this faith in a whole different way that I think shaped my life even to today. But it reminded me that you don't have to see the whole staircase. Again, you just have to take that next step. As you're walking the path, it's going to reveal itself. Like the path reveals itself to you as you walk it. But if you never walk it, you'll never know. And the biggest battle isn't the external things that are going to come your way that are outside of your control. It's the one happening inside. And so as I look back, I can see how internal preparation and I didn't even know I was preparing, but I was preparing through prayer, reflection, journaling, learning how to change my mindset around things. That prepared me to be able to take that leap and that step of faith when that opportunity presents itself. And so let me shift my story into how that can hopefully inspire you in this new year. I want you to think about how are you in charge? How can you take more, I don't want to say take charge, but how can you pay more attention to your internal self? One of those things is to what I call audit your inputs. What is consuming you? Is it news, social media, conversations? Are they fueling growth or feeding fear? Let me repeat that again is what you're putting into yourself on a daily basis, into your mind, into your soul, however you want to say it. Are they fueling growth or feeding fear? And if they're feeding fear, you need to find a way to cut that out of your life. And the reason why I say this is you cannot create possibilities in a fear based mindset. No way, no how, because it's going to get hard. Then the fear is going to take over. And then you say, I shouldn't do this. I can't tell you the things that I've even done in the past 3 years that I was scared to death as I was doing it. I was scared, but I didn't let fear win. And that is a huge, hard thing to do. But I think it starts with what are you listening to? So I needed to listen. This is why this podcast is so important. I needed to listen for myself to people that told me why it's possible, to listen to stories of individuals. And that's what we're going to have on later this year of people that have created what seems to be like hard, you know, and those things that they went after, how they made that possible. But what you're listening to, who you're surrounding yourself by is going to either fuel your growth or it's going to feed your fear. And so this year, I want you to pay attention and lean in to those things that's going to fuel your growth over feeding your fear. Another step is so one is audit your inputs, what's coming in. Number two is what I said earlier. Reframe challenges as opportunities. Instead of why is this happening to me? ask, what is this teaching me? And this is so hard to do when you are in the midst of it because your emotions are going to take over. Believe it or not, I had a really challenging week last week. And there were things that were thrown at me, some that I was kind of prepared for, some that I wasn't. And I could have very easily slipped into a mindset. And I'm not saying that it wasn't the first reaction. So it might be your first reaction, but then you got to re-pivot into the better mindset of like, why is this happening? But instead, I thought to myself, this is happening and it's okay. And there is something I'm learning in this process. And there is a different iteration of this whole situation that I can't even see yet that I think will ultimately be for the good. And that mindset, if you can learn to reframe challenges as opportunities, is going to help you go the distance. Because when you can see something happen in your life that you don't like and trust that it is happening for your good, that it will all turn out, or even if it doesn't turn out, that you're going to be better for it and you're going to learn something from it, then that is going to help you move forward. And that'll help you see also challenges or even things that don't work out. Or I don't like to use the word failures because I think every failure is a learning opportunity, but things that don't work out, you're able to say, I learned something. So it wasn't I failed, it's I learned. I learned. I didn't know that. I mean, I have messed up a lot as a leader, as an individual, as a mom, as a girlfriend, as a child. I mean, I have messed up. There are things that I don't do that's always right. I have reacted in ways that I wouldn't be proud of. I would not want it broadcasted on the social media. I'm just going to be honest with y'all. But in each of those things, I can take my mindset and say, how dare you, or why didn't you do better? And I can change it to, wow, I learned in that. And I don't want to have that experience again. So, what do I need to learn or do or change for that to not repeat itself? And so that brings me to number three, and that is strengthen your internal belief system. Daily affirmations, journaling, surrounding yourself with people who expand your thinking. This is important because that internal belief system is what is going to carry you through. So, how can you strengthen that belief system? And it could even be for those of you who believe in a higher power, it could be prayer. It could be getting around that spiritual family that you have and really being able to strengthen that. I'll be honest with you, there's nothing that makes you feel that you can step forward more than knowing that I'm only here for a blip of a time, and there's something bigger than me that's orchestrating all of this. And so strengthening your internal belief system, however you do that, it's vital for you to be able to create that possibility. And number four, just take one step forward. I'm not going to repeat this because we talk about this all the time. You don't need the answers, you just need to start. Part of it, what keeps people from changing or doing things is because they feel like they have to know it all. I'll be honest with you, sometimes ignorance is bliss when you start on the journey. You just got to start and you're going to learn along the way. These four things is what I'm encouraging you to do this week of how to just pay attention more to your internal world. Identify what's fueling you. Is it fueling growth or feeding fear? Identify how you can reframe and challenge those or take those challenges as opportunities. Strengthen that internal belief system and take one small step forward. And so here's what I want to challenge you for this week. Identify one area where you've been focusing externally instead of internally and commit to shifting your mindset and taking small, intentional, internal action. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, what is the one thing that you're going to do that you're going to focus internally on instead of the external circumstances? I want to help encourage you and remind you that living an inspired life isn't about guarantees. It is about courage and the internal life that you have, your internal self, you as a person, you are uniquely here for a reason in this time with unique strengths, talents, abilities. And the more you can cultivate that internal, and I'm speaking to myself when I say this, that internal self, that is going to help you shape the external. So start there. And listen, if you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend who needs this message. Until next time, keep believing in what's possible. And remember, the journey provides what's needed along the way.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.